Welcome to Crazed Performance Repair's channel. Today we are going to address a fuel line leak. Above me I have a 2008 HHR. The guy had a complaint of a fuel line leak. He said he patched it in order to get the vehicle here, and it wasn't leaking when I pulled it in. I'm assuming it's going to be a rusted line repair. But the lines are rather clean, which is a little suspect to me. We are going to go ahead and remove this wrapping and figure out what the problem is and how to actually fix it. Okay, so I got the cover off here, and we can see that he's got a rubber hose in both spots here with a couple of clamps. Now it is rusted. It looks like he tried to clean it up a little bit with some file or something rough. He scratched it really good to try and clean the rust off. Okay, we're going to go ahead and loosen these lines up. Let them leak out into the oil pan here. Alright, so you can see this line here. It's clean on this side. And then right on this side there's a little bit of a rust spot here, but that was the cleanest spot because down here is a little rust, and then up a little ways it's just a little bit of rust. So we're gonna hope that we can flare that little section there. Before I do that, I'm gonna share this little tool with you that I just used to cut that line. Now you notice this dash here, and then there's also these two dashes here. This thing auto sets. It's got springs inside here that auto set how hard it applies for the line, so you can cut the line without having to keep adjusting the dial here. So this line here, we got the cleanest spot being over up kind of high, so we're gonna go right here for this. Just for the sake of showing you guys, at least I'm gonna inspect the top side of the line. It looks like I see a little rust there. Give you guys a glance. So this thing is gonna move over, and now we have that line lining up with the first line there. I'm gonna go a little more because this is a hard line. Oops. Well, I didn't mean to drop the thing, but I never adjusted that dial, and I was able to cut the line. It cut a nice clean cut. Now I always adjust it a little bit softer than what I probably should. It takes a little longer to do the cut, but I like that cut better because it leaves less of a burr on the inside that you have to worry about. Now this line looks pretty good, but it looks really rusty there. Oh yeah, I see a nasty rusty spot up higher. So we're gonna have to patch this line a little bit further down. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that now. So I'm going to go ahead and replace both these lines back up closer to the tank. And we're going to do it that way because there's a really sketchy spot up here that I'll show you when I get this down and past the exhaust. So a lot of lines require these to disconnect them. I do not believe this line does. I'm going to go ahead and take a look inside or on here though, but I think there's a tab up on top of this line. It is in fact a push tab style. I recognize that I took a mirror and shined it up top, and I'm able to see that it's the style where I have to push a tab. It releases the clasp inside this line here, and then you can pull it out. The problem is that tab does not push whatsoever on this vehicle, and you might run into this issue as well. So I'm going to give you a heads up on how to address it. Usually when those tabs do not cooperate, it's because there's a bunch of dirt and stuff wedged up in here. So what you have to do is you have to take your finger and push like this kind of on it, and then at the same time an air nozzle of some sort or a cleaner or something, and put it in there, whatever you have available, to try and flush out or clean out whatever debris is caught in there. And usually you can get it to release when you do so. Okay, that one was by far one of the worst ones I've done in a long time. It was really wedged in there. Now for more information on the line and mechanism, you guys can go ahead and click the link above for a better description of how this thing functions. Okay, so I pulled those two lines out, and what we have to go with here, or work with here, is a little bit interesting. So this guy was the one that was down, right about there, something like that. And this is the one that I pulled off first. And this part of the lines is not too shabby, but unfortunately, this is the rust that I saw was right here. And I thought, okay, so I got to go up a little bit higher now. And so this guy was like this around this side here. And so I cut that off of there so I could see what I'm up against. and then I saw this, and that's obviously a problem. So, oh, it's kind of holding. Oh, there, that one's junk. I could break that one pretty easily. I don't have one of these, but this thing is rotted, so I'm going to have to get a new end for this. So this line is going to be replaced as long as the piece of line that I get to replace it is. I have to repair this as well. Now this one is not as critical. It's not under any pressure or anything, and I'm still debating how I'm going to go about fixing this. Alright, so after some evaluations of the lines and what's available today, I have decided to go with repairing what I have. So this guy here, I'm going to end up going rubber hose, probably cut it here, and then just run a rubber hose down to where the other end of this is, where I'll find a clean spot to cut it, and then hook it up that way. So that one's not a big deal. All it is emissions related anyway. However, this guy here, being it's rotted right here, I have to replace this end. So I have this guy here, and it is the same size, same style, so that's going to replace that. But it has that on both ends, so I'm going to be cutting this and then hooking another line up to it. So now what we need to do is, this is a pre-made flared line. It comes with this fitting, a flare on one end. I'm going to use this just because of convenience. I wasn't going to buy a whole roll of line just for doing this job. So we're going to take this guy, we're going to add a flare fitting to this end. Now there's only one true way to make a absolutely perfect flare on the end here, and that is to make sure that you forget to put this nut on here. If you forget to put the flare nut on, I guarantee you that flare will be perfect. Alright, so this line itself is a 3/8 line. Of course, I gotta make sure that's on there. We're gonna shove this thing in here. When it comes to attaching these, you want to pay attention to the position of whatever line you're on. Because of leverage, you will be able to clamp the line down a lot better if you take advantage of leverage points. So you can see my main one closest to this is right here. That means that I want to make sure this one is tight and this one is loose to start with. So by doing that, now I'm going to utilize the leverage of the full length of this to tighten that down. But of course, before you ever do that, you need to make sure that this line is in the correct position, because if I do it right there, I'm not going to make a proper flare. It's going to be a piece of junk. So here is the part that goes in there to do the double flare. It's got like a contoured concave area in here to roll the piece and make it the right dimension. But to get the height that's correct, most of these flaring tools, you use this thickness here to judge the height of which you want this line to stick out. So you can see how the line itself is the same exact height as the thickness of that piece. So now we take this guy, shove that in there, and of course you got to make sure this is tight. Okay, now that's tight. We can try snugging this one up, but it's pretty much useless because you use the leverage of the full length here. Now you want to take this part of the tool. On this particular design, I have to open this up all the way and then cradle it this way, turn it, and then I can bring it over so that it's above that. I will put it against that to tighten this down. Okay, now I'm going to kind of move and turn these and slowly just tighten this little at a time, wiggling things, twisting things, trying to make sure that I'm as centered as I possibly can be, because if you're crooked at all, it'll make a bad flare. So now I'm going to go ahead and reef this thing down. It's going to be quite tough being it's a steel line, but you will know as soon as you are done doing this, because it will just come to a dead stop. There. It's to the point where it got really hard really fast. I'm just going to go a little dab more and loosen this up. Now you can see the bubble that's there. A nice, really clean, smooth bubble. Now we're going to take this thing, go in that same bubble hole, just like we did with the other adapter, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to move this around, tightening it a little bit at a time, just kind of trying to find the center point. Now I should be in the center. And this last part here is kind of, you got to feel it. You have to kind of try and feel for when you're going to be bottomed out. And this one did not take much of a turn, I don't think. I think I got it to where I like it. So I'm going to loosen this up, take a look. So I think I want to go a little bit more. This is the part where you really want to take your time. And by doing this little spin thing that I'm telling you to do, you're really making sure it's centered. And that's the best resulting flare by doing that. Okay. So now we are going to remove these. Now I don't recommend doing this to put them on, because you don't want to over tighten the hell out of these. But I'm going to use this to take them out just because it makes it a lot easier. So now you can see that part of it right on the end here is a little bit smashed down, and that's from the clamping down on it. The flare itself is a really clean, smooth, even flare all the way around. So there is a good flare. This fitting goes all the way down, and then it will be attaching to this guy. But the little teeth on here have now scratched the coating off of this line, and so it's not very well protected. Now the best thing you can do for such a scenario is anti-seize, grease, anything you can think of that will displace water or push the water out of the way that is reasonably thick. You want to place it on there, and that way the water can't really get into that area very well. Try and avoid getting anything in the actual line itself. That way you don't throw whatever you're putting on there, like anti-seize in my scenario, down into the fuel system. Well, it looks like a pretty darn good fit. I mean, it's a little bit off, but considering it's really close to being the right dimension and shape and everything, so I think I can feel comfortable putting that in. Okay, so when it comes to putting hard line and hose together, I don't want to just cut this and leave it a smooth end like this to put the hose on, because it can slide off. If you're ever doing it on a system with actual pressure, it's good to know, so I'm going to do it anyway. But you do just the same thing as if you were to flare the line, only when you put this on here, you just don't tighten it as much, and you only do it once. So instead of doing a full double flare, you're basically doing like half of a single flare. Okay, so as you can see here, I have a nice barb. It's basically half, literally half of a bubble flare is what I've created. And when you do so, it gives you a nice spot to make sure that the hose clamp isn't going to let the hose fly off of here. So it's a really nice fitting to use for creating a hose barb. You can see this is still a little bit dirty, but it's nice and clean where I'm going to put the clamp and the hose up to. So that's kind of my repair there. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys how I decided to go about repairing this thing as a final process here. So I have this guy going over here, and that is going to connect to the emissions side of things. So it sits like that, roughly. And that hose will be connected to there, but I'm going to put that on after I get this line in place. Now you can see I have it going here, and I have electrical tape wrapped around it. And then before I finish wrapping the tape, I wanted to show you there's RTV between this and that to create a waterproof seal. This is probably way overkill, just kind of a little step I'm taking to prevent it from corroding, because what I'm going to do next is the part that's going to cause it to corrode if it were to have a problem. Really? This thing's been sitting here for 3 days, and just got a drip of gas. Anyway, so these, I got the zip ties here holding the hose into place. I'm going to go ahead and finish wrapping this. And then, so I'm going to take some of this exhaust header wrap type material, and I'm going to wrap it around here. Now this stuff will collect moisture, so I'm going to also do a secondary thing to try and prevent this from collecting moisture. So I'm going way above and beyond on this job to prevent this line from rotting out up here, because the last thing I want is to have this guy have a problem with this line. This should easily last the life of the vehicle. What I'm planning on is this aluminum ducting tape. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to go behind the electrical tape and start it about here. Now the exhaust runs right here, and there's also a little heat shield on the exhaust, so I shouldn't have a problem. But just because I have this rubber hose here, I want to try and prevent it from getting dry rotted and heat soaked too badly, which is why I'm doing this. The fuel going through this pipe will help keep this area cool. This will create an insulation barrier to keep a temperature change. I just got dripped on again. Wow. Alright, and then this guy will prevent the moisture from soaking into this. So this will be wrapped right here, and the tape will be on overlapping from the electrical tape to that to prevent the moisture from getting in there, hopefully. And then if moisture does get in here somehow, hopefully it'll be prevented from getting in here because of the tape and the RTV. So we're going to hope like hell I don't create any pinholes and problems. Okay, one last little step I have left. I have this thing wrapped. I have it sealed on this end as best I could. I took and rolled up a little bit of the wax paper, shoved it here. That way it can let it bleed out in this area if need be, which I highly doubt it will, because it's in an area that should not collect much moisture, but you never know. Now, the last step here is these little zip ties. These are header wrap or exhaust wrap type zip ties. They are metal and designed specifically for heat. I'm going to take those and put them next to the zip ties that are already in there. And those are going to keep all this together. If the adhesion from this aluminum foil type wrap comes apart, it'll keep it from letting the rest of it fall apart. Okay, so you can see this is the splice here. I got the connector for the evap right here. That goes up to that hose that's sitting up there. And then right here, I have the main fuel line connecting to it, the quick connect. If you trace this around, you can see the section where I have the heat protection, and that's because you see the exhaust here. Now this exhaust is going to go up, and I'll show you that as soon as I'm done showing you the rest of the line. There's the rubber hose. I'm going to zip tie this into place yet, but I want to give you guys a visual of a before I put the exhaust on. But here's the line running all the way up, and that is where I found the clean spot on the line for me to be able to reuse the old line, and where I ended up flaring it. So you can see the new line going all the way up and around and up there. So there's how that's done. Now this is the line right here that I had to replace. I was hoping that I could cut it back here because from the underside it looked fine, but as soon as I pulled it down and started looking at the top, I saw how rusty that was. And that rust, because the undercoating only sprayed on the bottom, that rust ended up coming quite a ways. And this is where all that protective plastic is. And that plastic goes back all the way up to right here is the last one of those things for the plastic. So I went right before that, and you can see it's not very rusty here at all. There's just barely a smidge on the surface. So that's where I ended up putting the line. Now the exhaust here, you can see there's quite a distance in this area. There's a lot of airflow that comes across this area too, so you really don't have to worry about this getting very hot. Right up there is where the air is stagnant. It gets stuck and gets hot quite often, and that's why I had to heat shield that area. Now we come around the other side here, and that's where it goes down to. So there you have it. This line kit is complete, and hopefully this helped teach you a few things about repairing rusty lines, maybe doing a flare. Hopefully it helped you somehow, some way. Like, share, subscribe, and if you like what you see, be sure to check out any of the links that come after I talk here. And have a great day. Thanks for watching Crazed Performance Repairs YouTube channel.